I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Real Debates. We have a fun one today because Brian Michaels over on FanZone has been crushing it. So I was like, hey, dude, do you want to debate over here? And he's like, fuck no. And I'm like, well, you're going to do it anyway. He's like, whatever. And then Chad, I was like, hey, Chad, I don't want you over here. He's like, but I really want to. So, the exact opposite. So let's go ahead and see what Brian has to say. Brian, all jokes aside, like I said, seriously, you have been crushing it. Just what is your thoughts on just the different spectrum of kind of the prep process, kind of behind the scenes? We talked about like you're not going to like overdo it, but at the end of the day, you're still a competitor. So I do assume that you probably prepped more than you even thought you were going in. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I did obviously do some preparation for it, and because that's just kind of the way I like to do my debates. But my thing with this one, I know I hurt your feelings the other day when I said, I'm not going to, prep as hard for this one. And it wasn't like I'm saying I don't take this seriously. It's more just I don't feel any pressure, to win. It is basically just for fun, and that doesn't mean I can't take it seriously. Doesn't mean I can't still prepare and enjoy it. But that's how I come into this one looking. It's just kind of like that one I got to worry about belts and defenses and things like that. And here it's just like let's just have some fun debate.
You still technically could, but yes, I get what you're saying. Yeah. But also the other good thing about this is if you lose, you'll probably still play within like a month or two because that's why I keep the roster size. That's
why you were nice enough to delay my match because obviously as I moved on in the other tournament, I said I'll still want to do yours, but I'd like to wait till I get that one out of the way because now I know it'll be a month or two or three before I go again. So come over here.
And we don't know if you won or lost, so stay tuned. I don't know. I don't remember when the things were posted. It's hard to remember like what do I know versus what I'm not supposed to know. But all right, let's go ahead and see what Chad has to say. All right, and the timer starts now. All right, and the match is going to start in 20 minutes. Chad, go ahead and let us know how you're feeling.
Hey Henry, thanks for letting me play. Oh wait, I don't actually talk like that.
Thank God.
No, but yeah, no. I mean, I like doing debate. It's just the thing is, I'm really rusty. I haven't done this in a pretty long time.
You were supposed to recently, and then it got canceled.
I've had a lot of bad luck with debate stuff recently, like matches getting canceled and stuff like that. So I was hoping to maybe get a little bit of a,
what do you want? You wanted Appalachian State or something? Like, come on, now, man.
I wanted a little bit of practice before going up against someone who's a champion right now. I almost got there at one point in another league, and you said no. You said I couldn't have it. So I've been trying to do my best here or there. But all that said, I'm very excited to go up against Brian. And I think these questions are really fun. And I have no idea where he's going to go with some of these. So I'm just excited to duke it out with him a little bit and see who's right at the end of the day, I guess.
Absolutely. So this is going to be a fun one. And shout out to Jake Tato and Eric Ibarra Moreno in the background. They're going to be co-judging with me. If you guys have been watching a lot of these matches, you know that we're not going to see them for an hour because we're going to do all the judging at the end. So Eric, write down your notes. No, I'm just joking. It's an inside joke, but I do have my notes. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and flip a coin right now. Brian, do you want heads or tails?
Heads.
It's an eraser. Ooh, tails. Chad, do you want to close on question? Hey, you guys said it's just for fun, so I can flip whatever. Chad, do you want to close on questions 1 and 3 or 2 and 4?
1 and 3 or 2 and 4.
And closing, not opening, because closing.
Right. Fuck. 2 and 4.
Okay. All right. So you'll be opening on 1 and 3. So we are going to get started. All right. So the first question is going to be in the category of Pirates of the Caribbean. What or who would you cast as Captain Jack Sparrow in a Pirates of the Caribbean prequel? All right, so 1 minute is going to go to Chad when you begin.
All right. An actor who plays a young Jack Sparrow in a prequel should be able to bridge the gap between giving us a version of what Johnny Depp gave us before and giving us something new. For this, an actor would need versatility, dedication, and focus, but also physicality, humor, charm, and the ability to get lost in the role. We need range to portray Sparrow as young with a lot to learn, transitioned into what we see in Curse of the Black Pearl. I think Austin Butler embodies all of this. He's new, fresh, and exciting. He'll garner a lot of interest to the new movie and sustain it with his charm and his ability to morph into the character. Whether it's a real-life person, a character in a book, or in this case, a new version of a movie character, Butler is young enough to convincingly build this into a new franchise if that's what they want to do. With the physicality of his roles in Elvis and Dune 2, Butler has shown he can express flamboyant showmanship and he can master a fight scene. People have also been clamoring for Butler to play this role, and he's been asked about this in multiple interviews, and he always approaches it with reverence. You can tell he wants to do it, and he would bring something special to the role.
And time. All right, 1 minute for Brian when he.
Johnny Depp's Captain Jack Sparrow is a hard act to follow. He created a singular iconic character that was funny, heroic, conniving, intelligent, slapsticky, flamboyant, and drunk all at the same time. To cast someone else in the role is a tough job, but I think the one person to be perfect for it is Robert Sheehan. Sheehan is best known for his role in the Netflix series The Umbrella Academy, where he already plays a flamboyant drug addict with supernatural powers named Klaus, aka the Seance. First of all, physically, he's got the perfect look. From moment one, you would instantly buy him as young Jack Sparrow, which is crucial to a prequel. The right costume and a few embellishments in his hair, and he's perfect. He already frequently has the same facial expressions as Jack, similar body language and mannerisms, even the same cadence and speaking in some scenes. He fits right in with period work, having appeared in everything from Shakespeare to Season of the Witch, The Tudors, The Young Blades, a swashbuckling series about the Three Musketeers, and he has experience in fantasy and supernatural products like Fortitude and, of course, Umbrella Academy, where he also shows he has propensity for action and comedy.
Did it go on? I just kind of lost track. Did it go on? I'm sorry if it overwent. That's why the timer's there. Trying. This is one of the few times when trying to produce and all that stuff. So with that said, just for everyone at home, no, that's a video clip. I'm going to post 2 pictures of our guys just to have a little idea of what we're working on, and then we will have the opening. So this one is going to be Brian's pick, and I know this was one of the few times I'm like, son of a bitch. I was prepared. I had plenty of time behind the scenes to go, and then I lost it. And then I know that's the worst. The only bad thing about live, I usually never fuck up. And then this one is going to be Chad's pick. Well, of course, it wants to save as a WebMD, so.
Oh, Lord.
I know, motherfucker.
Let's see. I can probably.
Well, the good news, everybody knows who Austin Butler is.
I know.
Exactly.
I wanted to keep it fair.
Yeah, to be fair,
I wanted to be fair of like why I'm doing it, but
yeah.
But yes, that is essentially over. All right, so you know who Austin Butler is. It keeps saving as a WebMD. But thank you, Brian, for bringing your own material. Way to go, Chad. You didn't bring your own. But I'm just joking. All right, 5 minutes when the first person begins.
So I know looks aren't everything, but it is important that you can buy that it's the same person. This is a prequel, not a reboot. So you have to believe that this is the same incarnation of the character, just a bit younger. And I can believe Sheehan becomes Depp in like 10 years or whatever distance is. I don't see Austin Butler becoming the Johnny Depp Jack Sparrow. He doesn't seem to fit at all.
Honestly, I think he fits perfectly. The thing is, I think what you're doing is you're just looking at the looks of Robert Sheehan and you're like, hey, he kind of looks like Johnny Depp a little bit. why not just cast him? And I think the problem is he's honestly just not that great of an actor. He's in a lot of movies, like you stated, a bunch of them. You talked about Umbrella Academy, and he's not bad in Umbrella Academy, but it's not like he shines. It's not like a person that people talk about that they're like, hey, he should play the next Jack Sparrow. I think he would be great. And I think that's because, he just doesn't have that star ability that Austin Butler definitely has. And if you talk about the look, we've seen Austin Butler be transformative. He's been Elvis. He's been Fade Ralpha in Dune 2. And those are two entirely different looking characters. If a character requires a specific look, a specific speaking voice and cadence, we know Austin Butler can master it. And he's already a fan of the franchise. As
You're talking about, he can create these new looks. He can do these transformative things. But the problem is we're not just creating a new character. We have to match and feel like we're in the same world, that we are the same person as Johnny Depp's. Now, you said that I was talking about just looks, and I didn't. I went to the opening about everything from the voice and the mannerisms and the way he acts and his personality and how he has experience doing these kind of roles. Austin Butler, honestly, he's done nothing to show that he has a range of comedic ability to pull off a Jack Sparrow. About the only comedy he's done is like he's done child acting like Aliens in the Attic. You don't want to use yoga hosers as a kind of positive evidence that he can handle comedy and do a big role like Jack Sparrow. And beyond that, he's made most of his career just kind of being the brooding and quiet James Dean type, Bike Riders or Once Upon a Time. Even Elvis was largely just quietly smoldering, but that's not who Jack Sparrow is.
While I agree with what you're talking about, most of the flamboyant comedy stuff that you're talking about is from Umbrella Academy, which feels like Klaus feels like just a very different character from Jack Sparrow just in general. But if you look at TV, just look at Austin Butler's SNL work. He's incredibly funny, and he can do different kinds of characters and stuff like that. So if he can be really, really funny at SNL, and believe me, a lot of actors have failed at SNL, he can totally transfer that into a Pirates prequel and become that character. That's what he does. He's a chameleon. He'll take whatever from a book, from source material. He's already a fan of the Pirates movies, and he said, when people have said, hey, Austin, you should totally be Jack Sparrow because all of us fans really want you to do that because we love you, he said, I don't know, that's a big task, but if I were to do it, I would want to bring something special to it. I don't want to see the outright like mimicry that I think that Sheehan would do. I think Sheehan would actually end up being a parody of Johnny Depp rather than actually being a nuanced take on the character, something that we can see a 10-year span. Like you talked about the 10-year span, Sheehan's a lot older than Austin Butler. Austin Butler could realistically give that bigger range to play a bigger span of time and show, and he has the acting ability to show from a very younger age to what we see in Curse of the Black Pearl.
He can't go very younger age. He's not that much younger than Robert Sheehan. And honestly,
about 40 years.
Talk about how he's supposed to, in your opening, you talked about how he needs to be the bridge from Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow to something new. But the problem is we're not bridging into something new. We're looking at the past of a character, not the future of a character. And I'm not saying he's going to mimic him because you don't want just plain mimicry. He is going to bring a different energy to it. But the problem is, honestly, Austin Butler, first of all, I don't know who's been asking for Austin Butler to be
everyone.
I've never heard that once in my life.
Watch some interviews. People are asking.
If anything, Butler would make a better Will Turner. If you made a movie with him as Will Turner and Robert Sheehan as Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow, I would be there first in line to buy a ticket. I think that'd be a fun movie. But he would make a better Will Turner. He would not make a good Captain Jack Sparrow.
Because Will Turner is not like the leading man of the movie. Everybody you see when you go to see a Pirates movie, you go to see Jack Sparrow. You don't go to see Will Turner, and Austin Butler is the leading man that could capture that role better than anyone else.
He's too quiet and brooding, and he does not do that kind of role.
You talk about quiet and brooding. Have you seen all of the happy?
That he can do that.
But have you even seen Elvis? Where yes, he has some brooding.
I have seen, or most of it just kind of his quiet, smoldering.
Because Elvis gets very broody towards the end because his life doesn't go great. But have you seen the scenes earlier?
All right. Chad is going to be doing his 1 minute closing first. So 1 minute when Chad begins speaking.
Speaking of SNL, I honestly think that's what Robert Sheehan would give us, is just a parody of Jack Sparrow, whereas Austin Butler could give us the full range of emotion that he's shown in Dune 2 and Elvis and Bike Riders and all these other movies that Brian was actually mentioning. Thank you for that, because Austin Butler has all of this experience being a leading man, getting people to come to the theater. It's someone that Disney would definitely want to lead their franchise, because people would go, oh, Austin Butler's the new Jack Sparrow. This is amazing. I don't think the Will Turner comment works. I think Robert Sheehan could be a Will Turner maybe, because he's kind of just gets lost in the ensemble. But with Austin Butler, he's the lead. He's the one that you really want to see come in and give us this nuanced performance. He's already said it. He would do it, and he would bring something special to the role. And with his ability to research and do different kinds of voices, you can see that evolution much easier than you can with Robert Sheehan, who doesn't know how to do that. He just knows how to flail around a little bit as Klaus.
And time. All right, 1 minute for Brian when he begins.
I'm not sure anybody can live up to Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow, and honestly, it'd be a losing battle to even try. But if someone had to give it a shot, that someone should be Robert Sheehan. He has the experience to handle the role in all its facets, from the comedy, the action, the personality, etc., not just the looks. But he's unknown enough to not bring too much baggage and a preconceived notion of who he is. His look and style is a perfect match that you can easily buy him as a younger version of Johnny Depp's Captain Jack, but he can bring something new to the role. Austin Butler is a decent actor and definitely the bigger, hotter name, but he's also wrong for this particular role. His James Dean-esque brooding is not what this role calls for, and he has been the leading man in so many movies, but for all the wrong kind of roles. He hasn't done anything yet to show that he can handle such a flamboyant, comedic role. And just because he wants to do this role, or because fans supposedly say that they really want him in this role, that doesn't mean he's right for it. It just means that they're fan casting their favorite star in a popular movie. That's all it is.
And time. All right, that is going to be question 1. Judges behind the scenes, if you can just gather your thoughts. We're going to be moving on to question 2. Question 2, we're moving over to the Harry Potter franchise, which is going to be Chad's strength. The first one was Brian's strength. Chad's strength. And the question is, what movie within the Harry Potter franchise is the most rewatchable?
Wait, Harry Potter wasn't my strength? What?
You wish. I know you're a big Harry Potter nerd over there. You probably never even seen the movie that you chose, but we'll see. We are going to be starting with Brian.
Thank you.
I don't think you should be thanking, because you're not a big fan. 60 seconds. Would you begin?
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is the OG. It's the film that kicked it all off, the film that introduced us to this whole new world and captivated multiple generations of viewers. Later films continued this journey and expanded on the world, but none of it would be possible without the foundation laid in that first film. You may consider others in the series to be better films or your favorites, but if you were to pick just one Harry Potter film that would generally be considered the most rewatchable, it has to be that first one. You can relive those first moments through Harry's eyes of awe and wonder as we first enter his world. You can experience it as a complete story on its own, without feeling like you're jumping into the middle, having not rewatched the previous films first. It's also lighter and more fun than many of the later films. They get darker and more serious, which is not a bad thing. But again, if you decide to take 2 hours or so out of a busy day and sit and rewatch just one of the films, you don't want somber and foreboding. You want whimsy and enjoyment. And you want to feel like you can watch a complete film and not feel like you're jumping into the middle of a story. I'll stop there.
All right. Gonna use this time there. Gonna jump back over to Chad. 1 minute when you begin.
The most rewatchable Harry Potter film is also the best Harry Potter film, Prisoner of Azkaban. Honestly, it's the perfect Potter film. Alfonso Cuarón adapted the book with precision and elevated pretty much everything from the first 2 movies. It looks beautiful, sounds amazing, the acting is better, the visual effects are so much better, it has so many classic moments, character development, it'll make you laugh, it'll make you scared. At the core, there's a brilliant mystery that unfolds, keeping you engaged throughout. You look forward to so many moments in this, like Aunt Marge blowing up, the night bus, the Dementors, the Boggart, Professors Lupin and Trelawney, Buckbeak, Hogsmeade, and the Marauders Map. Turn to page 394, the Time Turner, the Patronus, Sirius Black, and Hermione punching Draco in a smug fucking face. All of these moments are strung together with brisk pacing and excitement that is maintained for the entire runtime. Honestly, if the first 2 movies feel too slow and family-oriented and all of that all of the movies after Azkaban are dark, Prisoner of Azkaban is the perfect movie to watch. That time turner sequence alone is worth the price of admission each time, just to see that beautiful Expecto Patronum.
Whoa,
We're gone like 20 seconds over already.
Yeah.
Did I?
Ignore everything he said.
Yeah.
His whole opening must be.
That's why you're not. That's why you shouldn't read notes, motherfucker.
No one told me to stop. I didn't know.
There's a timer on the bottom of the screen.
I wasn't looking at that.
Exactly. Notes, nerd. All right. Brian, this is your 1 minute pitch. You can use that now and later. So no, I'm just joking. That was the joke, the pitch thing behind the scenes, the extra seconds we were talking about. 5 minutes when the first person begins. Pay attention on screen because there will be a timer at some point. Jeez.
My bad. God.
We're down to 20 seconds already. Holy shit! Oh, it's your strength. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's all right. Honestly, I mean, I see where you're coming from. Sorcerer's Stone is amazing. It's a classic. It introduces us to the franchise. All the things that you said, I agree. It's so good. But the problem with it is rewatchability. I think is one of its weaker points. You may want to watch this every once in a while over again. But like if you're going to rewatch it a lot, it's going to start getting bogged down by many things. And one of the things is the exposition. It's explaining the world to you over and over and over again. You get to hear McGonagall explain the houses, Oliver Wood explaining how the balls work and just how all of this works. But really, you want to dive more into the world rather than having to, have everything explained to you ad nauseum over and over again. If you're
want to dive into the world, and in theory, now we're talking rewatchability. So in theory, we're talking about people who've already watched the movies. So the problem is you want to dive deeper into the world, but if you're diving into the third movie, which again is a great movie, it's many people's favorite movie, but if you're only watching one movie, to jump into that. And you're going to start watching that thinking, well, oh man, you're going to immediately start thinking, I kind of wish I'd gone back and watched the 2 movies before this because of everything led up to this. Or you're going to sit there and get to the end of the movie and think, well, there's all this stuff set up for future movies that now, if I'm just watching this one movie, I'm kind of left unfulfilled. And you went through in your opening and listed off basically a long list of characters as reasons it's rewatchable, but I don't agree with that. I think the rewatchability on this is great, especially if you happen to have someone else that hasn't seen it. It's like, hey, I would love to rewatch this. I'd love to watch you watch this.
That's actually the problem, is because that's not fun for you to rewatch it. You're trying to rewatch it through their eyes. That's a totally different thing. But what you're looking at is basically when you have so much exposition in the ones. Sorry, my point. That's not my point. Basically, you said that. No, let me go on to critical. I'm losing my focus here. Sorry. In Sorcerer's Stone, you have so much CGI that basically takes you out of the movie. And I'm talking about really bad stuff like the troll, CGI humans, like when they jump on the troll, you can see this. It really takes you out of the movie all of the time. And the acting, the child acting is horrendous. So like when you want to rewatch a movie, you want to feel what these characters are feeling. And when you're with them in the first movie, you're not really feeling that as well. But when you get into the third movie, you really feel it. Like I said in the beginning, when Harry yells that Expecto Patronum, your heart soars and you want to keep reliving that moment. A lot of the moments in the first movie do not reach that thing. You said that
absolutely hard to soar in that first movie because you are experiencing those things. Like you're remembering back to the first time you watched it, like not for me, but for many people, you watched it as a kid for the first time. And so when you rewatch it,
you're kind of reliving. All of these when I was a kid.
Exactly.
So that point is
but especially that first one, you're taking back to the first time you entered this world. You're taking back to the feelings you felt the first time you saw Harry arrive at Hogwarts, the first time you saw him.
Every once in a while, that's fine.
These creatures. If you were to ask 100 people which one they've rewatched the most, they've probably seen the first one the most, and there's a reason for that. Not just because it's been up
because it's the first one. It's because
the first one is rewatchable. Because we're talking, it's been 23 years.
That doesn't make it rewatchable. That just makes it the first movie. And if you're going to do a rewatch,
they still have rewatched it the most times.
You might have rewatched it the most times, but not because it's rewatchable. It's because it's the first one.
Because it was convenient. What are you saying?
Listen, you might start the franchise and then you start the first one and then you might stop, but that doesn't make it rewatchable. That just makes it like, oh shit, I didn't have time to watch the rest of them.
Well, then why didn't they jump and start with 3? You just made my point.
If you jump back and start with 1. Point. If you've seen them all before, then you don't need the setup of the first 2. You can just watch the third one. And it brings you, because that's the beauty of the Harry Potter films, is that they're each 1 year of school. So you can go into one specific year of school and have complete fulfillment from that year. And the reason that I brought,
especially in the later films, you start relying more and more on setting up towards the ending.
Well, it doesn't matter because we're not really getting into that yet. Now,
you're
if
not going to start a book and start in rereading a book and start on chapter 5. You're going to start at the beginning.
That has nothing to do with this argument. What I'm talking about is you can rewatch the third one over and over and over again, because you don't need the first two after you've already seen them. You can look at this movie as a complete one thing, because what Alfonso Cuarón brought to the world, the cinematography looks so good. And you said that I mentioned so many different characters. Yes, it's because these are the characters that introduced that are so memorable, like the Dementors. That's better than
Hagrid's
seeing
not memorable. Dumbledore's not memorable. McGonagall's not memorable. He's still introduced in the first movie.
McGonagall is in the third one. They're all in the third one too.
Exactly, and they're introduced in the first one. You're saying the introduction of characters, like if your characters are in the fifth movie, doesn't that make the fifth movie more rewatchable?
Time. Oh fuck. Another great example of, man, I wish I was debating this one. Closings. We're gonna start with Brian. 1 minute when you begin.
Look, I get it. Prisoner of Azkaban is many people's favorite film of the franchise, and many people say it's the best film of the franchise. I have no argument there. But the best doesn't necessarily make it the most rewatchable, especially when you're talking rewatchability for everyone and not just one person's personal preference. Azkaban gets so dark and serious, and it's not something I want to watch by itself without resolution to the story. It sets up so many things that come later and don't pay off until future films that if I'm picking just one film to rewatch, I wouldn't want to watch that and feel unfulfilled, like I'm ending on a cliffhanger. Likewise, if I chose to rewatch just Azkaban, I'd feel like I was coming in mid-story. Even though I know what's happened before, I'll feel like, oh, I want to watch the whole thing. And I'd immediately wonder if I should go back and watch the previous two first. I'd pick a movie that's light, that brings me back to that childlike sense of awe and wonder, and reminds me people why they fell in love with the world in the first place. I'd pick the movie that starts off the whole thing, and then if I later decide to turn into a marathon, I haven't skipped anything. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone isn't the deepest or even necessarily the best film in the franchise, but it absolutely is the most rewatchable.
Time. All right, Chad, if you have any notes, just know that timer will be on screen. Just for
okay, stop making fun of me. I got it.
I know. I just, in case you shift over, there's no need for me to have to chime in. That's why this show's awesome. 1 minute.
Brian makes a good point about why Sorcerer's Stone is one of the most classic, because it's the first one, but that doesn't make it the most rewatchable. He talks about like Prisoner of Azkaban makes you want to watch the other ones later. Sorcerer's Stone does that because Sorcerer's Stone's the one that brings up Voldemort. It makes you interested to see who Voldemort is. There's no Voldemort in Prisoner of Azkaban. That's why it's a self-contained story. That's why Alfonso Cuarón, an auteur, came in and created this film that said, look, I'm going to do this one and done movie. I'm going to make it the best movie you've ever seen, the movie that you want to go back to over and over again for all of these great moments that you love. And then, you're not going to need anything else. You're not going to need to watch stuff later. You talk about it being drab and, dark. It has so many comedic moments, like the witch or the housekeeper at the beginning, and the Hermione punching Draco in the face, like I said, and the buttons hitting Dudley in the face. Right. It's the best and most rewatchable. Like that.
All right. Behind the scenes, judges, gather your notes, and we're going to be moving on to question 3, which is in back over to Chad, because he picked horror. I assume it's Chad.
Yeah.
Back over to Chad. Horror. And then, so Chad's gonna open. And your question is, what horror movie should have been nominated for Best Original Screenplay? All right, so start off with Chad. 1 minute.
All right, put my notes over here this time. When Scream was released in 1996, it changed horror forever. There were many innovations before it, but prior to Scream, horror was languishing. All the same old tricks and tropes were not enough to keep the genre fresh. With Scream, writer Kevin Williamson said, what if the characters knew about horror movies and their tropes? How can we play with that to dissect the rules and have fun with them, but also to subvert them to keep the audience guessing? It's fun to be surprised, and Scream's mystery is so engaging yet simple. It's easy to get lost in ambition and make an overly complex story. But despite all of its best ideas, Scream's story is simple yet effective. After its iconic opening, Scream's dialogue dialogue and complex characters evoke comedy, relatability, and tension. The script's brilliant pacing carries you to an iconic ending, and history was made. As iconic as we know it to be now, people knew how special Scream was then. Kevin Williamson blew up after this as a horror writer. Here's a template for how to make horror interesting again, and thus we get films like Shaun of the Dead and Get Out. With a screenplay this brilliant, the only reason... Okay.
And time. Not teasing you. I was just letting you know that it's on screen. I put the words.
No,
Yes, I appreciate it. All right. 1 minute over to Brian.
With Get Out, Jordan Peele had already proven not only the quality of his writing, but with the best original screenplay nomination for that film, the Academy appreciates his talent and his particularly unique voice and storytelling. Us was another such unique story, really unlike anything else out there. A horror movie with doppelgangers that were not clones, they weren't aliens, but something new. As he always does, he blended what is definitely a horror movie with much deeper themes. The movie he wrote was a study of of nature versus nurture. Are we born a certain way or a product of the environment we grow up in? It delved into themes of classicism, the haves versus the have-nots, and what happens when a people suppressed for a long period of time decide to fight back. He creates two distinct characters for every actor, expertly brought to the screen by a group of talented actors, yes, but it all starts on the page. He crafts a riveting backstory for Lupita's character, which of course pays off in the end when we realize it was a doppelganger that's lived above for 30 years. And of course, his screenplay once again managed to balance horror with well-placed and not overdone moments of levity and humor. Jordan Peele's Us suffered from following the great debut in Get Out, but it was just as deserving of the nomination for Best Original Screenplay.
Okay, I think
Damn
we
it.
just
I clicked the wrong button. I'm in the background talking to myself. And time. All right, we're going to go into the 5-minute opening. When the first person begins speaking, take.
You make a great point about Get Out being so widely received and so well reviewed and acclaimed that it won Best Original Screenplay. So you know Us is on the minds of the Academy. They didn't nominate it. Why? Because Us is very convoluted of a script. It has a lot of big ideas. It has a lot of ambition. But what it tries to do is so many things at once. It wants you to get all of these great like social commentary stuff that it has, but then it wants to actually build a realistic world that ultimately doesn't make a lot of sense. And you talked about the tethered basically being fully formed characters. They're not. They're just kind of like zombies basically. And you get a little bit of character development, I think, for like one of them, just like half, but it doesn't go the full way. And I feel like he wanted so hard to push in a lot of the social ideas, but the problem is he just went too big with it. And he created.
I'm not saying he created. They weren't all fully fleshed out as much as like Lupita Nyong'o's tethered character, the other tethered one. But he did create separate characters for each of those, which you actually knew. You could feel. You learned something about each one just in the very first scene that you saw them when they family encountered the family. You knew who they were. It's funny you use the word convoluted because Scream is a very entertaining screenplay. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not Oscar material. It's first of all, it's just not the type of movie the Academy nominates. The only time
why not? Like look at
the only time the Academy recognizes horror is when it's blended with other genres like crime or drama. And Scream is straight up slasher with jokes in it.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying it should have been nominated, because the Academy looks down on certain things like slashers, but you have to realize that some movies elevate the genres that they're in. Just because
it reinvented the genre. The genre was languishing. I've said that in my review. If you look on Letterboxd, that basically it reinvented the genre. But that's because reinvigorate doesn't mean that it has great screenplay. The dialogue is witty, but it's very derivative. Constant references and unnatural lines, kind of like Kevin Smith movies, where it doesn't sound like things people really say. There's lots of references, lots of one-liners, lots of jokes you'll quote, but it's not something that's going to get a best screenplay nomination. It's fun to hear, but it doesn't get recognition. And too much of the movie, you talk about being convoluted, too much of Scream is really dead ends. It's a series of red herrings and misleads. They're trying to keep everybody guessing to the end, and which is fine, but then it just makes it kind of treading water until you get to the end when they decide it's time to reveal the
perfect screenplay is you have a brilliant setup of who is the person that's doing this, and then you want to find out who it is until the very end. It's very Knives Out, which Knives Out is actually a movie that was way better written than Us, and actually got the nomination that Us didn't get because it was better. Same thing with Scream. Scream should have got in, and there were like 3 movies that year that were nominated for Best Original Screenplay that no one talks about. They still talk about Scream. Why did they talk about Scream? Is it because of the acting? Is it because no? It's because of the writing.
Because Scream has a fun
elevated
screenplay. It does not have an Oscar caliber, Oscar worthy, award worthy screenplay, unless you're talking like the MTV Awards, which I think it did win.
What you're doing is that's what I'm saying about Us, though. I'm saying Get Out is amazing. It's simple yet effective, and it delivers just like Scream does. But just because Get Out is freaking amazing doesn't make Us amazing. Us
Get Out as a screenplay is not the same as Scream as a screenplay.
After Get Out to be kind of like Get Out, but it's not. But you're trying to poke holes in Scream, which is a movie that you can't really poke holes in, because what it did was it brought back horror. It like made horror interesting again. And you can't do that without writing a phenomenal screenplay. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to take the Academy Awards and you're trying to put them up here and be like, Scream can't touch it.
What you're trying to do is talk the whole debate. So I'm going to jump in here. So the thing is, the Academy Awards, yes, we're talking about which one deserved an Academy Award nomination. Yes. And you do have to take into consideration what the Academy Awards will actually recognize. Scream, I've said, I love the movie. I think it's fun. It's maybe my favorite horror movie of all time because it is a ton of fun. But it's not an award with a screenplay. It's got, you want to talk about plot holes. That has far more plot holes than Us has. I mean, if you try and think about which character could be where, you just nodded in agreement. See, there you go. There's problems with your screen.
No, I said like. I didn't agree to that. No.
And for instance, as far as I don't think that Us would have won, obviously, screenplay, but it deserved a nomination because it had a tough year. There was Parasite, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, things like that. I'll tell you which nomination should have had. 1917, won Best Picture, great film, great epic cinematography, acting is that, but the screenplay is not what made that movie great.
The screenplay is part of what made that movie great, and it deserved its nomination for sure. And you're trying to like elevate the Academy Awards up here, say Scream is down here. Us is down here. Scream is up here. It reinvigorated an entire genre, and what it did was it's perfect because you're looking at so does Terrifier. You have like Beverly Hills Cop got a nomination. Young Frankenstein got a nomination. These are satirical, just like Scream.
And time. Oof. I love the sass. Let's go. I thought you guys were nice. I'm loving it. 1 minute when Chad
yelling to get in. Who? Me?
First on this one.
Chad.
That's me. I noticed we didn't talk too much about Us because Us is problematic and doesn't really have a lot going for it in the screenplay department because it is so convoluted. Brian's trying to poke holes in Scream, but it's kind of a perfect screenplay. If you just look at the dialogue in this screenplay and read it, it reads like an extremely fascinating horror novel that you can't put down. And that leads to the movie being something that you just can't stop watching because it's so good. And the way that it smartly develop these characters into people that you can follow for the rest of a franchise is so unheard of in the horror. Without Scream, we don't get films like Get Out. We don't get films like Us. And Brian trying to tear down Scream as something that's just fun. It's not really well written. Well, then why did everyone want Kevin Williamson to come in and write their movies for them? It's because he is a brilliant writer and he wrote something that changed horror forever. And Us is a lackluster attempt to be as good as Get Out, and it's just not.
And time. 1 minute for Brian when you begin.
To address two things you said, everybody wants to see Adam Sandler movies too, comedies. But that doesn't mean that Adam Sandler deserves for his comedies deserve Oscar nominations. And we didn't talk much about Us during the middle section because I covered Us in the beginning and didn't really need to say much more because it was pretty much covered. Scream, absolutely one of the most entertaining horror movies ever made, especially for its time when it was seriously struggling. Horror was struggling. Scream drew new life into it. But let's not pretend the screenplay was Oscar caliber writing. It was fun, but the story has a lot of holes. They try to misdirect and mislead at the expense of a tight story. The dialogue is entertaining, packed with references and memorable quotes, but it's also got that same Kevin Williamson, unnatural, overly wordy, often forced dialogue that he pioneered with Dawson's Creek. None of this keeps it from being a blast, but that does keep it from being worth an Academy Award nomination. Jordan Peele's Us suffered from looming in the shadow of Get Out because that is a better film. But even if it doesn't quite match that high bar, it's still very deserving of award consideration. From the very concept, the execution, the dual characters, the suspense, the terror, the deeper social commentary, Peele is perfected. Us should have gotten a nomination as Best Original Screenplay.
And time. All right, that is going to be the end of question number 3. We're going to be moving on to the final question. So, final prepared question, I should say. All right, judges, gather your thoughts, and we're going to be moving. Damn it, I didn't update the bottom, so hopefully you guys knew what they were debating. All right, fourth question is going to be in the category of 90s, I'm pretty sure. This one's a fun one. Let's see how this goes. I'm excited. This is back to our what ifs, because the what ifs so far haven't been well, but they've been great in theory. So I'm hoping that we can get there finally. This is like the fourth one we've done so far. Starting off with Brian. What if you replace a lead from a franchise that started in the 1990s? So I'm not going to kind of go into like, does that mean anything at X, Y, and Z? Let them approach, but that's the prompt of what we're looking for. So Brian, this is not a pitch question, so it's going to be the same 1-5-1. So 1 minute whenever you begin.
So think back to 1992. To a sports comedy starring Emilio Estevez as a lawyer who gets sentenced to community service coaching a local Pee Wee hockey team. They are, of course, the usual blend of misfits and train wrecks, and he doesn't get along with them, but eventually they grow to understand each other and work as a team and win, and everybody's happy, and it's all rainbows and unicorns. Now imagine that coach as Samuel L. Jackson instead. The Mighty Ducks starring Samuel L. Jackson instead of Emilio Estevez would be a very different movie, and not only does it completely transform the movie to give us something new and different, but it makes it fun as hell. This is no longer a feel-good family film. It's still a sports comedy with kids in it, but all movies with kids don't have to be kids' movies. This is Sam going full Sam, and I don't mean inspirational Coach Carter Sam. I mean full-on R-rated, angry, bad motherfucker Sam. You can still have your underdog sports story and your learning to like kids cliches, but we're going to make it far more interesting and a whole lot fucking funnier. This Gordon Bombay is not a former hockey prodigy. Imagine the kids asking him for hockey tips. He would just look at them with his wide-eyed incredulousness saying, "Look at me. You think I know anything about goddamn hockey? I don't fucking know anything about hockey."
First plot hole. Will his name still be Gordon? All right. 1 minute. That was just a joke. 1 minute, Chad, when you
Okay. What if Nicolas Cage was Scott Calvin in The Santa Claus instead of Tim Allen? I find this idea intriguing. Nicolas Cage is a madman workaholic, but he's also a phenomenal actor. You never know what to expect from him, and he never runs out of ways to surprise you. He can really do anything, including become Santa Claus. It's actually strange that we haven't had Nick Cage become Santa Claus yet. Tim Allen is good in the original movie, but he wears off pretty quickly. He's sweet, but his one-liner jokes are only funny for so long. In the sequels, he appears pretty stiff and unfunny, while the movies get weirder and wackier. I think Nicolas Cage is the answer to this problem. He's often known for his off-the-wall delivery and crazy persona, but he can also be incredibly sweet and family-oriented too. Look at movies like Pig, The Family Man, and Con Air. Yes, he can be crazy too. I know you're thinking about Matchstick Men and Face Off, but I'd put all of this together and show that Nick Cage can be the perfect Santa. Sweet and loving towards children, but also wacky and silly. This way, he's ready for anything the franchise has to throw at him.
Hopefully they're not throwing reindeer shit. 5 minutes when the first person begins speaking.
I just want to expand on my idea a little bit more. So this Gordon Bombay is no longer Mr. Nice Guy Bombay. He's intimidating as fuck Bombay. He's not going to take their shit or their excuses. And if you think he's taking shit from the opposing coach, Lane Smith, hell no, he's going to make him piss himself and cry. He'll teach the kids to win by any means necessary. The dirty tricks, the mind games, the loopholes in the rules, the rough play. He's going to pitch it all. So if you replace him as the lead in this movie, you are going to completely transform the movie. But I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think this is a movie that you could make far more interesting and far more fun with Samuel L. Jackson in the role instead.
I mean, you would definitely make it different, that's for sure. But honestly, all you would be doing is just taking a franchise that a lot of people love and just making it so different. I don't think you need to take every single.
This is a what if. The other one doesn't exist.
That's what I'm saying. Is you wouldn't have it, and a lot of people love that franchise. So if you don't have it, then people who have kind of like built a lot of their childhoods around a franchise like that wouldn't have it today, and I think that's really sad. I don't think
be honest, the franchise, actually the first one.
What you're pitching though is a guy who comes in to teach hockey, and then he goes, "I don't know fucking anything about hockey," and then he just walks
because he's forced to be there. Yeah,
he's forced to be there, and then it's not interested. How the hell is he going to end up teaching hockey to kids? And if it's not even interested, if he's not even interested in doing it or being there, or like, what is this movie? I don't think you've even thought this out.
I've given plenty of thought to this. I've given thought the idea of the thing about when you take a traditionally kids genre and you want to make it into an R-rated comedy more for adults, it's a ton of fun to take something like Samuel L. Jackson, put him in. He doesn't do a whole lot of like straight comedies, and he's really never done much with little kids. And to put his brand of comedy against like little kids, I think that the seeing the conflict between those two is just a gold mine for comedy.
Honestly, I just don't find Samuel L. Jackson that funny, like as a lead in a movie that like what you're talking about. Like
I don't know what you're thinking of then.
That's what I'm saying. It's just not an interesting pitch of what you're
not interesting as Nick Cage as Santa Claus. Basically, you're just swapping out one white dude, white suburban dad, for another white suburban dad. Because Nick Cage in 1994,
white, yes.
Nick Cage in 1994 is not the Nick Cage, the wild, crazy Nick Cage that we got from Con Air, Face Off, etc. later on. He was doing things like It Could Happen to You, Honeymoon in Vegas, Guardian Test.
But this would have been the start of that. Could you imagine Nick Cage going into this movie and turning into Santa Claus?
But he's just going to be the same as Tim Allen.
See, no, how would he be the same as Tim Allen?
I'm choosing to change my movie to a whole different movie, which you're criticizing. You're basically swapping the leads and basically making it basically the same movie with just a different face on it.
The same movie because he is insane and also sweet. He can add more to this movie and to the franchise. Because if you look at the rest of the franchise, it's very wacky and silly in the second and third one. And Tim Allen can't match that. He's very stiff, and that's why those are not as good as the first one. I think Nick Cage would actually elevate those to be somewhat watchable, where you actually want to go in and be like, these are the movies with Nick Cage as Santa Claus? Holy shit, I definitely want to sit down and watch all three of those. And that's exactly what you would get. And he would elevate those perfecly. But with yours,
you're going to make it Mighty Ducks Not Exist. You're going to take the Santa Claus, which many families do love and many kids loved, and you're going to change Nick Cage because you want to be like, ooh, he's going to do something wacky. He's going to be crazy.
Well, no,
so you're either taking away from the one you love.
He's always going to have that little vibe to him where he can do something like off the wall and stuff, and that's very entertaining, which would be a different style of comedy than Tim Allen brings to it with just his little one-liners. That makes it way more watchable. But I said he can also do the sweet stuff too and actually bring you in when you want to see him fall in love with his family and his family fall back in love with him being Santa Claus and that kind of whimsy that Nick Cage can bring as well.
But the comedy in Santa Claus isn't based on the actor. Once you're putting someone in a Santa suit or a prosthetic fat suit, the jokes are pretty much all the same, regardless of the actor. So I think putting Nicolas Cage in that situation is not really going to change up much.
He changes the entire vibe of the whole movie because he's, like I'm saying, he's bringing a sense of wacky and whimsy to the movie that you don't know when he's going to go off. Like when he's slowly starting
Samuel Jackson, Mighty Ducks,
batter and stuff like that, he will actually start to freak out and go crazy. Like, have you seen Dream Scenario? This is what happens when he's, in a situation that everyone's trying, like, he's changing and people are looking at him differently. He's going to start to go crazy. And
your snapping and going crazy is going to be a pale imitation of what Samuel L. Jackson would be.
No, it's not at all. Yours is just a worse movie than the franchise that people love.
That's because you want everything.
And time. I'm loving this. This is, I will say this is the best version of the What If so far. Regardless of what I'm thinking, I'm just letting you know, confidence-wise, going into your closings, this is fun. So good job. 1 minute, Brian.
Me? All right. In questions like these, it really all comes down to which hypothetical movie you would rather watch. For me, the idea of the Santa Claus with Nick Cage is just a new face on the same dad character, and it wouldn't really interest me. And Nick Cage in 1994 was not yet the Nick Cage that we know and love. And even with a different actor, it's just not enough of a new take to make it worth revisiting or revising. But put Samuel L. Jackson in the Mighty Ducks and turn it into an R-rated comedy that lets Sam be Sam. Shut up and take my money, because I'd be there opening night. Like I said, you can still do the feel-good ending where the team comes together and wins, but let's have some fun along the way. Watching him losing his shit, dealing with his obnoxious, incompetent children, watching him go off on the old white antagonist coach. Hell, just watching Samuel L. Jackson try to ice skate, maybe not uphill. But to paraphrase Sam himself, shit, Taylor, that's all you had to say. I'm there. I want to see this movie.
One bit of chat with you because
I mean, I will say Brian's is definitely more different, but that doesn't make it a better movie, something that people are going to watch, because he seems like he's pitching a movie where Samuel Jackson's just getting frustrated and pissed off and just not knowing about hockey at all, how the fuck would the team even win? How would these characters even connect with him if he's just being a piece of shit to him? I don't want to see Samuel Jackson yell at kids for fucking 2 hours or 90 minutes or whatever it is. But if you put Nick Cage in here, he's going to elevate these movies. I want to see him go to head with Martin Short. I want to see Nick Cage as the plastic Santa in Santa Claus 2. And I want to see him elevate the first one too, because Tim Allen is so stiff. People don't like him these days, actually. So going back and rewatching them a little bit can be a chore, especially if you watch the whole franchise. But if you have the 3 Santa Claus movies that has Nick Cage going off, but also being that sweet guy that we know from him in Pig and Con Air and stuff like that, you're in for a fucking treat, dude. It's amazing.
And clearly Chad doesn't have the baby around because he's been dropping F-bombs, and I love it. I'm here for it. All right. That is the end of our prepped question. So go ahead and get a little thumbs up behind the scenes from my peeps. All right. They are both good. All right. So shout out Tato and Eric. As always, I will go first, and then I will let Eric and then Tato close it off. All right. So starting off with my spiel. Question number 1, which was, who would you cast as Captain Jack Sparrow on a Pirates of the Caribbean prequel? All right. This one was the hardest one. Spoiler alert for me in terms of just my where I ended up going. So Brian did a fantastic job of knocking down Austin Butler in the sense of he's just essentially brooding, yada yada. Doesn't have the charisma. But then Chad was able to get back on that. And he's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, he's a leading man. He's a franchise leading person. That's just something you want to see, as well as also just providing just, good examples of him as an actor. I did also like Brian's flip on that, where it's like his guy is less unknown. So the responsibility of the actor, like taking face over the character, overshine the character isn't going to be there. So I did feel like that was really good. I got that Chad was kind of saying that maybe Brian's actor would be more of a parody. And then whether it's true or not, I'm not Aaron. I don't fact check, but, Brian didn't knock it. The whole he wants to do it and all that stuff. If that's actually true, that's pretty interesting. So like I said, this one was the hardest one. This was a close one, but I did go Chad on question 1. Just one of those, one, it was tough. Like I really, maybe the leading man thing was the tiebreak. I honestly don't know. Just a reminder for the judges. That was the look. I did get the picture there for at least the judging, last thoughts. All right. Going on to question 2. This one was weird.
They're all weird.
No, I know. I mean, in terms of approach, I feel like you guys both argue different things. Chad, well, let me start off by saying, Brian, you did a fantastic job in your opening and your closing of just like setting the template of like what you're going for. But in the middle round, you kind of went under the semantics of like, at the end of the day, his movie's in the middle and mine's in the beginning. And I didn't like that semantic argument, because that's not really the point of this question. Because then if you go into the semantics of every question, then you get bogged down on that. And then Chad, you did a really good job in the middle of just kind of, talking about, the different elements of your movie, and his just being kind of a kiddie and the bad acting and just, et cetera, and the CG. But I will say it got really close. And then at the end, Brian, you, once again, like I said, your closing was really good. And Chad, you didn't, I'm not even trying to be mean here. I didn't write a single point down in your closing. I just didn't get anything to like kind of hammer home your point. So I did end up going Brian in that one. I just feel like he did a good enough job in the opening and the closings to kind of hammer that home, even though the semantics did kind of, get in the way a little bit, but not too much. Question number 3. This one was the horror one. This one was also hard because similarly, you guys were kind of debating different things. Brian, you also kind of went down the semantic road again on this one. I don't know if it's because you were kind of an up in battle, just because, obviously Scream's the more popular movie, and us, regardless of if there's fans of it, at the end of the day, anything against Scream, especially in this community, that's a tough hill to battle. But I did feel like you did get bogged down in the semantics, and this is just one of those where if you watch Tato's most recent debate, when you know something, you're just hitting it home. And obviously you can clearly tell Chad's a fan of it. So he was able to hammer home a lot of specifics with Scream. And it's technically not a knock, but it did get a lot of wasted time in the debate of just the connection and the comparisons to Get Out with Us. And I do feel like that kind of, at the end of the day, when I'm just thinking, I'm like, well, Get Out was better, instead of thinking of why Us is good. Not saying obviously they're different years for the actual question, but it took my mind away from the actual potential nominations for us. So I went Chad in question 3. In question 4, once again, shout out to you guys. You guys did the best job of actually debating the what if concepts. I do want to prove you, shout out you guys. So anyone watching in the future, this is how you handle the what if. Essentially, if the other thing didn't exist, how would we handle it? It was never said once, but I want to be the first person. You essentially, Brian, you pitched Bad News Bears for hockey, and I was.
Thank you. Fuck me.
How did it not whether a positive or a negative, but the fact it didn't even get mentioned, I was like,
I was waiting the whole debate.
So I just wanted to throw that out. It did affect my viewing, but I just want, once again, as a debater, I'm like, how the fuck did that get mentioned? And then Chad, Brian did a really good job of kind of just hitting, like, is your movie even different if you do that? And you kind of contradicted yourself a bunch of times. You're like, he does wacky and zany, but then he also has the Family Man stuff. And then whenever you kind of used Family Man as a thing, you didn't really give examples, so I wasn't able to like mentally vision how he would be a family man. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't even have to. You didn't even need an excuse or an example. I'm like, yeah, Nicolas Cage is wacky and zany. So every time you tried to use the Family Man like balance, you didn't have enough examples. At the end of the day, the zany did take over, and then Brian was just kind of like, yeah, that's not not as interesting, and it's not not as fun. And at the end of the day, I don't know technically what Brian's plot is, but between the two, which ticket would I buy? It would be the Sam Jackson motherfucking hockey and, all that stuff. So I actually have a 2-2 split of Chad and Brian. Sorry, Brian, I didn't give you your promise 3 behind the scenes that you paid for. I will refund your money. Moving over to Eric, jumping over to you.
Oh, I took a lot of notes. Hopefully it doesn't bug me too much. I also thought that the first one was very close. Like, I'm not familiar at all with Robert Sheehan, but I think you made a good point. You got a lot of good attacks against Austin Butler. Like he has the baggage as opposed to Robert Sheehan, who doesn't. No comedy, but Shad had a lot of good comebacks for that, like the SNL stuff. I don't take much credence in the fact that people have asked for it. Like, I don't think it matters that much. So I think you brought a good point. Like, it doesn't matter if people like it. Like, it's just fan casting. At the end of the day, like I think Brian could have synced what makes Robert Sheehan's performance in Umbrella Academy is special, because I haven't seen it, so I'm not familiar with it. So I believe you know what you're talking about, but I'm not familiar with it, as opposed to, like, I think Shad did a better job at explaining how Austin Butler would bring something new, but also like Jack Sparrow liked. So I went with Shad in that one, but it was pretty close. I think the second one was similar. I think much like Henry, like there were different approaches to it. At the end of the day, I actually did make a note at the closing for Shad. I think he used that, like how the first one is kind of self-contained, but he actually brought up the Prisoner of Azkaban is actually self-contained more because it's not related to the Voldemort stuff, and it's the good middle point between the darkness and the light that is in the franchise, and he also made a much better attacks against Philosopher's Stone. Like I think he did a better job at attacking the first movie as a movie itself. So I went with Chad in the second one as well. The third one was very interesting to me. Like, I could be biased, but I really like both movies, to be honest. But actually, I went with Brian that one, mostly because I think he did a better job at attacking the movie itself, Scream. I think he hammered the dialogue, the treading water a lot better. And at the end, I went with Brian in this one because he actually replaced 1917 with Us as a movie. Like, Shad did mention it, like there were 3 movies that were nominated that year, but he didn't specifically, like, these movies should have been replaced. I believe you. I did check it out, and I know exactly which 2 movies you're talking about, like Shine and like other movies that nobody talks about anymore. I do think I don't agree with also Brian. Like, Dawson's Creek came out after Scream, so that Kevin Williamson actually started that dialogue in Scream, but that doesn't matter. That's on me. And much the same in the last one, where I think Ryan did a better job at attacking like Nicolas Cage as a replacement. He will be too similar maybe at that point, especially like 1994 Nicolas Cage is not the same as 2024 Nicolas Cage. And Chad could have said the same about Samuel L. Jackson. 1992 Samuel L. Jackson doesn't have that same credence, but he didn't say it, so I didn't count for it because he didn't say it. And he told me the better movie. I'm not familiar with Bad News Bears. I didn't know there was something similar out there already. So it didn't matter on your end, but I also went with Brian in round 4. So I also had a 2-2 split over here.
All right. And then Taylor lowered up. What's your judgments?
Well, fucking Brian chose to attack yoga hosers, so negative 1,000 points. I jest, of course. Brian did get round one for me. This one was super duper tight. I will say, like, just like hair thin. What the SNL counter to the comedy thing was really good. I like that. But when Brian pitched the Austin Butler as Will Turner, that one really hit. And then Chad, when you tried to flip it, it was kind of like your mom's a hooker, and it didn't really.
I was worried it was going to become that, and I was like,
yeah, it
did I
had that
say
feel
it?
for
But
me.
I had to say something.
So, Brian got that point there. The second one, the Harry Potter one, again, super duper tight on this one. You both made excellent points as to the rewatchability for different reasons. So what it came down to was when Brian ultimately threw the line about like, yeah, but more people are going to rewatch this one for like, not just because it's the first, but because, hey, I'm going to want to watch the whole thing kind of thing. It just kind of came down to the best versus first argument because that was the only real difference. And again, that was super tight. Brian just edged it out. On the screen on the third one, horror debate. Brian was able to poke those holes that you thought were unpokable. And like, yes, it's fun, but the dialogue is witty and Kevin Smith like and not as Academy Award worthy. Like while it is awesome, everyone loves it. It's just that Us is the more Academy Award worthy with the social commentary, with the Peel higher art form, kind of that one. And the final question. Sorry, I did go, Brian. Dirty sweep. Sorry, buddy. I love you, Chad. Like I said, the first two were really tight, but the last one, I kind of echo Henry and Eric's sentiments on that one, and I didn't really buy. While your knocks may work for you against the Sam Jackson, I do want to see Sam Jackson yelling at little kids, so that's fun for me. Ultimately with those kind of what ifs, what am I buying the ticket to? It's the Sam Jackson Mighty Ducks.
All right. So with that said, with total votes and rounds of 3-1 as well as 8-4 in the votes, today's winner is going to be Brian Michaels. All right, Brian. So just going in, obviously, what are your thoughts just on how tonight went, as well as things maybe in retrospect you would have done differently, approaches Chad had that you didn't kind of expect, and then just your overall opinions on just how the night went.
Yeah, no, I kind of knew I was going to struggle in the Harry Potter one because, I'm not real knowledgeable on them. So, I kind of took the most basic approach on that, but I managed to, find a way to attack it. Pirates, I knew going with kind of a more unknown person was a little bit of taking a gamble. I still think he'd be better, but he obviously convinced him that. I don't think it was a different approach or anything I wasn't expecting. It was just the judges bought in his stuff more. I think the what if is the one I felt very confident on. And yes, the Bad News Bears things did pop into my mind, but I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want people to think that it was just derivative of that, because it can have a similar theme and not still be worth a movie you want to see. But I when I was trying to think of things to talk about, and I just thought that one popped into my head, and I was just like, this is a movie I'd buy a ticket for. And so I'm like, if I can convince everybody else that this is a movie they want to buy a ticket for too, then I can take that one. But yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoyed this debate. I actually, struggled a little more than I thought I would. I will say the Dawson's Creek. What's that?
Got a little heated. I loved it.
It did. It started off, very civil, but then it got to a point where he was talking for long stretches of time. Like, I'm going to have to yell to get in here. I'm like, I'm done being nice. I'm going to start interrupting and yelling. I'm just going to have to be that guy. But maybe that's what saved me and not getting steamrolled in later debates. But I just want to mention the Dawson's Creek thing was just a misspeak. I knew that came after because I sadly watched that religiously when it was on. I meant to you continued it in that, and I started it in that. But anyway, but yeah, I mean this is a fun debate. This is everything I wanted it to be, and had a great time.
Absolutely. And just one last thing, just because you've kind of had a lot of experience most recently over in Fan Zone and just their types of questions, the more uniqueness or the more out of the boxness, did it open things in your mind that you didn't really know you had, or is it still at the end of the day you're just talking movies and
I absolutely prefer the more creative questions, like the pitch question kind of things. I actually at one point said I wanted to start a show somewhere that was just, instead of debates, it was just a pitch show.
Yeah.
Like I come up with pitch me a version
Pitch
of
Perfect.
Yeah, something like that. Because I think that would be a ton of fun, because it lets you be creative and think outside the box, and whether it be what if or whether it be pitch a sequel or prequel or whatever it is. And that's why I also enjoyed trying to come up with an idea for the Jack Sparrow one, even though we weren't coming up with a plot, just an actor. Just being able to think in your mind creatively and think, what would this movie look like, is to me a lot more fun than picking best, worst, overrated, underrated, which are valid debates. I don't mind debating those, but it is more enjoyable to be creative.
Yeah. And it also, there's always the worry of, if you pick something that's quote unquote best, judges might have their bias because they're like, I think that's the best. Whereas at least in this one, for the Harry Potter specifically, the most rewatchable. So it's like, yes, I agree that Prisoner of Azkaban's a better movie, but and even though I ended up voting for Chad, you still made it really close because the whole, or no, it was, you actually voted for you. So it's like, you know what I mean? Even though Prisoner of Azkaban's better for me. So I agree. That's why I do like these. So I'm glad you
and as far as the judges, I always just kind of have to trust that the judges are going to put aside their bias, because I mean, there are people in the community who aren't going to, but those are the kind of people you're going to have on here. But it's like, because I do the same thing when I judge debates, which I've done a lot, which is like, I could disagree with somebody completely, but if they make a better case for theirs, I got to give them the point.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I do my notes. And then that's also why, like I mentioned in my notes, I literally put the Bad News Bears, but that didn't have an effect in my voting. So even though I had my bias there, I'm only bringing it up in my judging, but it actually didn't have a point, which maybe John could take some notes on that, because he says things a lot, but it's like, did he actually sway his judging? But no, congratulations. And we'll definitely see where you go in your next match. Chad, well, overall, just at the end of the day, you've been a very, I don't want to say 50-50 because you're above 50-50, but you've had, like you said earlier, you've had a lot of ups and downs in the debate. So how did this kind of stack in? And obviously, all jokes aside, you went in like, oh, Brian's going to win. But obviously, since he did win, do you feel like, you maybe deserve the win? Are we hashtag justice for Chad? And just overall, is there anything in retrospect that you would change?
It's just a whole kind of thing. I mean, I knew going in facing Brian, this guy just came off of a title match win, which means you have to play a lot of debates to get there. And then when you get there and you win, and then, I watched his debate. I loved it. And he just like, he did like so many questions and got points on so many points. And then when, I see something like that, and then I'm like, well, I haven't played a match in almost a year. And I've prepped for this is the third debate that I've prepped for, and the first one that I've gotten to actually play. And I'm not going to get into why and stuff. It's just, cancellations happen. Shit happens. But I came into this very rusty, and I don't want to, get myself super down, or anything like that. But, when you have someone like Brian, who is so good and coming off of a lot of wins, it's hard to go up against that. He was very strong, offering those great introductions and closings, and he didn't really falter ever. And you saw me, I faltered a couple times. At least that one time I was like, what do I say next? And I'm just trying to get my thoughts together. And it's just, if you haven't done it in a while, you kind of forget how it is. And you kind of forget because I've always struggled with getting my notes together, doing a write-up if I'm going to actually read from a script, or if I'm going to just wing it kind of a deal. And I did a little bit of both here. And I think I did pretty well, being so rusty. But like I said, I've tripped up a little bit. And, Tato didn't even give me one vote. So that makes sense, because I can totally see Brian winning all of these points, because, I tried to bring a lot of stuff, but there's so many points I still had in my notes that I just wasn't thinking of at the time. And it's hard to look at bullet points and bring it up when Brian's right there attacking you and stuff like that, or any competitor or is attacking you and stuff. So, and especially with such a high caliber opponent as Brian, it was just really tough. And I was very passionate, And that's why, I was not really even thinking about letting Brian speak and, how much time he's talked and stuff like that. I was just trying to not lose.
Yeah.
And then Brian's like, let me talk. And I'm like, oh shit, sorry.
I'm here too.
I'm just really, you're doing so well. I feel like I need more time.
Yeah.
You're doing better in your short time than I am in my more time. So I'm like, you give me more time to not lose to you.
Well, that's why you definitely got the scream one for me, because I didn't really hear Brian talk. So
yeah, but I mean, that's the thing is like, I read the screenplay, and I'm glad that I like actually brought it about the screenplay. But you just forget just how quickly this time goes when Brian's talking and I'm trying to talk, and then he's bringing something up, and then I'm like, oh, well, I gotta counter that.
Yeah.
But now I want to talk about the screenplay. Oh, now I gotta counter this.
Yep.
And then I don't end up talking about the thing I want to talk about. And then I'm in the closing. I'm trying to. I know you would have picked Scream, and that's the thing is it's the best pick, and I feel like that's why I feel so bad is because I wanted to sell it better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the thing. I'm sorry to cut you off, Henry, but that's the thing, Brian, is if we're talking in the background.
Brian's not even here anymore.
Right. But if Brian, I probably would have picked Sorcerer's Stone. So I don't know. I was just in there thinking, I was like, you could make a case for both easily. There's a lot of Harry Potter movies you can make a case for most rewatchable. And he did such a great job, even though it's not his strength. So this match has helped me remember how debate is.
Exactly.
So that I can help structure things a little bit better. And like you said, even though I lost, I'll play again at some point soon. And maybe not someone who like just won a title, but if
iron sharpens iron, buddy. It's the only way to get better.
Exactly. If you need experience to be like, well, I just faced like one of the best, so it can't get worse than that.
I mean, look at me as an example. My only losses are against like Rue, Pez, dogs. You know what I mean? So it's like if you're only going to lose to the best. So
yeah, and Austin's like 0-2 right now, and he's incredible. So
exactly,
it's just any given Sunday,
Exactly. And then my final question, real quick, just because I know you do a lot of debates on like what Brian said, best, worst, overrated, underrated, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts on the entire debate that kind of expanded your mind, especially for when this isn't a knock here, this is a genuine question, but as someone who's a notes-based person, how does a more broad, expand your horizons, creative approach, how does that affect? And now that you've done it, do you think that kind of played into the fact that you're a notes-based person, but in this type of format, that's kind of harder because you have to be on your toes a lot more?
Yeah, I mean, if you have to pivot around a lot, like when Brian pitched his thing, I just wasn't ready for it, obviously, because you can't be ready for a pitch like that. And I didn't have the same kind of thing. So that's how the what if can kind of trip you up. I remember like in one, like JPO's match, like there was a whole, this is a asterisk on this question. And he just couldn't like figure out how to play that one specific thing.
Yep.
And then in the what if, when Brian has a whole pitch, and then I'm like, how do I tear this pitch down that I just heard in the moment? And I have all of the stuff about how I like Emilio Estevez in the Mighty Ducks. And then he's like, you can't even talk about Emilio Estevez. It doesn't exist in the timeline.
It's funny.
And then I'm like, I want to go full Abed and just turn into Nick Cage and start, mooing on the desk and stuff. But I can't do it because, people didn't like that pitch as much. So it's just, it sucks when, you're trying to be creative. But like you said, if you're like a notes type person or you have a lot of bullet points and you can't pivot as well, or you just haven't really thought about it as much, and you're just thinking in your own zone, it's hard to go over here then. So I do a lot of times like the more like, what is the best blank? I guess I'm basic. But,
No, but I appreciate you, and obviously at 0-1, you're definitely going to have someone that hasn't won a title because obviously no champions ever had a single loss in their entire career. So luckily you don't have to face Rue, at least in your next debate. But no, congratulations, and at least having fun, getting back into the debate, and I'm excited to see you again soon. So with that said, if you made it this far in the video on the live, you didn't because you're viewers, but if you're watching this on the repeat, go ahead and drop a like, comment below your votings, round 1, 2, 3, and 4 on who would you have picked. Comment below if you think that Tato hates Chad, and comment below if if I should actually return back the money that Brian paid me to vote for more times. My name's Henry Confidential. This is Real Debates. Later, Gator.